just a hack. He's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
The outcome of this game has a massive aftershock in the grand scheme of college football for the remainder of the season. And it obviously stems from the fact that Alabama suffered a loss this early on in the year. There's a lot to be taken away from this game. And I think the big thing first here, there is a massive debate on who now deserves to be the number one team in the country. And I think after what we witnessed yesterday, and I love to overreact on this show. Anyone who tunes into me on a weekly basis knows I love to overreact. And here I am doing it again. Tennessee deserves to be the number one ranked team in the country after that game. Find me another team so far this season that has a more impressive resume than Tennessee. They have wins against Pitt, Florida, LSU, and now a top-ranked Alabama team that is going to finish the season in the top 10 and very likely will compete for an SEC championship game and can still win the SEC championship game. That resume is better than anybody else's. Ohio State is yet to really play a competitive opponent, and their key victory is against Notre Dame, who looked like shit this past weekend, which I'm going to talk about at the end of the show. Georgia, on the other hand, has stumbled a hair in some games. They obviously dominated Vanderbilt. That does not take very much work for them to dominate against Vanderbilt. But they do have that Oregon victory, which looks more and more impressive. And if you're a Georgia fan, you're going to be rooting for Oregon to win because that is going to help that resume and that case for Georgia to be the number one team in the country. But the way that Tennessee has shown up on a week-to-week basis in a dominant fashion, despite dealing with injuries like losing Cedric Tillman, and to continue to be so offensively explosive game in and game out, proves to me that they deserve to be the number one team in the country. I understand that there are concerns defensively. They gave up a crap ton of points to Alabama, a game in which Bryce Young was recovering from an injury, and Alabama has not necessarily been consistent offensively. They've been very run-centric, and they gave up 49 points to this team. But the way that they have shown up, and when adversity has hit, they have recovered, shows me that they deserve to be the number one team in the country. We cannot allow previous rankings to impact where Tennessee sits. That always ends up being a negative for when the polls are put together by pundits. I got distracted by Colin saying, thank you for the like, Colin. Whenever the polls are put together by pundits, there's always this decision, for whatever reason, this bias, if you will, to react based on what happened to last week's rankings. I am always of the belief that you should start from scratch every single week and look at the resume, look how they did this past week. How does that impact your opinion? How does that impact how you feel about the team at this point in time? The way that Tennessee showed up, the way that they looked like the best team in the country right now. Georgia looked like it early on in the season. Taking a slight step back. Ohio State, again, has not played anybody. Before I can put them at number one or Georgia at number one, they need to have defining wins in order to be pushed ahead of Tennessee. Tennessee has that defining win, and they prove that they deserve to be in that spot. Now, the one key thing for Tennessee here, and this is so extremely important, Josh Heupel cannot allow his team to hang their hat on this victory. They cannot allow this game to be the high point of their season. There was a massive celebration after that victory, which was exciting, which was fun. We watched the goalposts get carried out of the stadium and thrown into a river. How many times have we seen that in college football? But if this team lives off of the excitement of that one victory, they might crash and burn. We have seen it endlessly on a multi-season basis. Teams will come in and beat the best team in the country and then ultimately get too hungover on that win and then will stumble in a later week. Tennessee needs to move forward and put this game behind them. They need to move on to the next with the expectation that the next game is the most important one. They need to almost not, I wouldn't even bring up this game if I'm Josh Heupel for the remainder of the season. I wouldn't talk about it. Move on to the next game, focus on your next opponent, because if they don't, they could end up suffering a stupid loss somewhere down on their schedule. Now, I have high expectations and a high hope, and some of the things that you heard from particularly Hendon Hooker, what he talked about after this game, I think that they're more than capable of moving on and continuing on, but that is the sign of a good head coach if you can move on to the next week without allowing the high point that is an upset victory against a rival to drag you down when you need to keep progressing forward.